Northern Iowa student government refuses to recognize pro-life club, calls them a hate group. Maybe the virtue-signaling student government should be labeled a hate group. I mean, after all, their very lives are a slap in the face of those mothers who bravely chose abortion but didn't abort them. I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and this is the Dr. Duke Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show, the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Today, we start at the University of Northern Iowa, where a pro-life student group was just denied acceptance by student leaders who compared it to a white supremacist cult and a hate group. One of the biggest problems we have on college campuses that nobody's talking about, is student government. Student government has quite a bit of power. They have the chance to get their hands on a lot of taxpayer resources. They dole out that money to the groups that are recognized by the college so that they can go about their business. And increasingly, almost none of those groups are conservative groups. You have student government here that is completely out of control. We've seen in other stories, you'll see some later this week, we've done them in the past few weeks, of student government unseating presidents of student government because they happen to be devout Catholics, unseating members of student government because young Latina women a decade ago said something unflattering about illegal immigration. A Latina criticizing illegal immigration 10 years ago means she has to be voted out of her seat now. The place on a college campus where you find the least tolerance, the most discrimination, the most bias and bigotry isn't the administration, although they're close. It is these student government groups, which they completely almost monopolize who gets elected, and when they're there, they're now trying to make the argument seriously that we don't have to recognize a pro-life group because to us, not as government, but as individuals, we see this as hate crime.
Well, and if you look on a college campus, not to get off, I'm going to come back to the story with this, but like if you look on a college campus at the kids, the students who go to run for these office seats, they're unopposed because when you go to college, you're not thinking, man, I'm going to be part of the student government. Although I did. But when you go and look at who actually wants to be there, it's the people who have the agenda already in their mind that this is what they're going to make their difference through the student government. And that's, like you said, where they can do a lot of damage because real money is actually being distributed.
And unlike the faculty who can get in trouble for politicizing their classroom, there's no consequence.
Oh, no.
And the administrators, there's absolutely no consequence for these student governors. And
at this University of Northern Iowa, they're actually refusing to acknowledge and recognize a chapter of Students for Life. All right, so it's a national Students for Life. They're, again, as we know, calling them a hate group. And according to the Young America's Foundation, the New Guard, their little journal, members of the student government also allege that Students for Life is comparable to white supremacist groups and uses clear militant language in its advocacy. Now,
can I just have you a second?
Okay.
You're telling me that Antifa doesn't use clear militant language?
You're
telling me Black Lives Matter doesn't use clear militant language. But see, those are okay because the militancy is directed at conservatives.
Now, we're just going to take a little listen-see at Student Senator Max Tenson, who is the one leading the charge on calling Students for Life a hate group.
And before this happens, if you have a low tolerance for stupid, I ask that you sit down. If you have a low tolerance for ignoramuses, I ask that you take a pill because what you're about to see is astounding.
This is a hate group. This is hate speech. This is hateful rhetoric that is infringing on basic human rights of healthcare.
You're basically saying you support them to violate women's rights. And I'm sorry, but I don't want a group on campus that's gonna just an example, if I'm pregnant, they're going to try to force me not to abort my child.
Yeah, they have the opinion that abortion is bad. I would argue that not all opinions are equal. There are opinions and there are opinions that get people killed.
Yes, Mr. Andy, the opinions that get people killed is the opinion that is pro-abortion. That gets people killed.
Yeah, so it was kind of hard to hear that last one, but that was Senator Triet Nago, who didn't understand what he was saying when he said that not all opinions are equal. There are opinions, and there are opinions that get people killed.
Right.
No sense of irony in that comment there, too. because this is a
explain to me
pro-life
how being pro-life gets people killed.
he doesn't understand.
Unless you're going to make the argument that because pro-life people want all abortions stopped, so therefore moms are going to die. But go back to the first guy, right? This is a hate group. This is hateful rhetoric. Whatever happened to having to prove this? And the second young woman who talked like a Latina Valley girl, right? And what did she say? Like, just to give an example, like, if I'm ever pregnant, people like this are going to stop me from aborting my child. I love the fact that she called it what it is. Wouldn't the progressive left see that as a kind of hate crime? She called it her child, didn't you? She didn't use the F word.
All right, so basically what happened is they denied the group. The group then appealed. The appeal then got denied because it went to the Supreme Court
of the
student government, right? So it went to the Supreme Court. But what's interesting is the university is actually kind of backing.
Okay,
outright.
According to the story, university officials officially rebuked the student representatives. Quote, the University of Northern Iowa is committed to protecting our students' First Amendment rights and is concerned that recent actions by the student government violated UNI policy by rendering a decision that was not content neutral. Quote, we have provided the petitioning student organization with resources and encouraged them to appeal the decision, which they did. And yet, in spite of the fact that the university telling these kids, you can't legally do this, not according to UNI rules and not according to the Constitution, they did it anyway.
Yeah, so the university came out with that statement and encouraged them to appeal. The appeal got denied. And according to the Senate, they're saying that the organization was not formed in good faith for lawful purpose.
Right.
So there's one more option. According to sophomore Sophia Schuster, who is the student who actually started this process of seeking recognition for the group, she said that there's one more appeal, and that will go to the president of UNI, President Mark Nook, who has appellate jurisdiction over the Supreme Court decision. So this sounds like it should be a win-win in the end for the group. They should get recognized because, as the university said, it's going to go now up to the president.
Well, I would say it's a win-lose. Yeah. It's a win-lose because it's a win ultimately that the president of the university has to override these little Nazis, number one. Number two, it's a lose because all he's going to do is override them. They should be disbarred. They should literally lose their positions. If you've been elected to student government and you are violating openly the Constitution of the university and the Constitution of the United States to discriminate against fellow students, the win-win would be these kids get recognized and you get removed, or at the very least, there's a recall election done. But none of that's going to happen. So in other words, I just simply ask you this. If a group of student governors were doing things like this to marginalize minorities, this would be overturned and the students who did it would be punished. No doubt about it. But because you're coming after conservatives, this will ultimately be overturned, but there will be no consequence for the kids who did it, which means they're going to do it again and again and again and again.
Now, keeping along this same vein, we know that across the country, students are vandalizing statues and memorials and pretty much anything they can get their hands on. And that is happening at the University of North Texas, where they decided this time we're going to take down a pro-life memorial. We're going to rip the flags and the signs from the ground that were placed there on the school lawn to memorialize babies being killed by abortion procedures. Now, I know this happened at my own little small four-year university. It happens across the country where pro-life groups will put down one flag to represent every baby that's been aborted. And so it makes a huge dramatic display and statement. And then there will be a group of students, they'll come in and take the flags out. That's what happens.
Can you give me an example, Katie, anywhere on a college campus, anywhere in this country over the last 10 years where a conservative group has vandalized a progressive installment? Can you? No.
I cannot.
I can't either because it's never happened. And yet these intolerant punks, this is why the story we just did matter. These kids now are getting elected to student government and they're carrying their bias, their anti-constitutional behavior, their illegal bigotry. They're carrying it to the highest levels of the school. Here you see, why do you think kids like this are enabled? people. What ultimately are the consequences? When you vandalize on campus, we've done dozens of stories of this, where conservative, pro-Trump, pro-life displays have been put up on college campus. They've been vandalized, they've been brutalized, and other than a talking to, what happens to the perpetrators? Again, I ask you, if this was an African-American group who put up a Black Lives Matter mural or some kind of a installment, and white kids came and tore it down, this would be a hate crime. But when you're dealing with conservative kids, the double standard here is, go back to the first story, the story we did yesterday. 98% of Wisconsin colleges' money went to Democrat, not Republican candidates. And what we said about that is, this is institutionally bad because of its monolithic nature. Vandalism, anti-constitutionalism, bigotry, you don't see it if it's going against people who don't look like you expect them to look. And so these things just keep happening.
And the thing that happens on these college campuses is, even if there is where something gets vandalized, who's the higher ups that take care of the punishment? It's the student government, because it was a student organization that was involved, and it could have just been random students, or it could have been another student organization involved, but it'll go in front of the student senate. And that's where the issues lie, is because all those student senators may have been wearing the mask and been participating in this, but they won't tell anyone.
And if it doesn't go to the student government, it will go to the equity people.
Well, though, one and the same.
Diversity,
because there's always going to be someone from the student government on the committee that the university puts out.
So there's no way for these kids, until it gets to the president's office, to get a hearing. And I got news for you. Not every university is going to have a president like the one at Northern Iowa who will do the constitutionally correct thing.
Well, down in Texas at the university, Young Conservatives of Texas was the group who actually put out the 1,000 flags on the school property. And according to them, each flag represented 60,000 babies killed by abortions since 1973 with Roe versus Wade. So take a look at what they did.
I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm not committing theft.
Oh, but you're in the business of millions of women. That's what you're doing wrong.
I'm a woman, so I have a say.
Exactly.
And we should let women choose. But no, you don't let them choose. You decide to do all this dumb and then decide that I can't have a choice either. I don't have a say in it. But okay. Okay, have fun.
Are you going to give our flags back?
Okay, bro. Now, it was a few short hours after all those flags got put out that the student vandals, as you just saw, descended on to take the flags down. And they had apparently, of course, organized themselves via the Twitter. And we actually got one Twitter user called Hippie Slut who said she can't wait to spend a Wednesday night ripping out 1,000 flags. And then we had another one who said, looks like I'll be tearing them up. So good on the university.
So let's see. Ripping and tearing could be applied to babies, couldn't it?
This is true.
And I love the broski. I love the broski there, because here he is saying that the little pro-life girls were denying him a say in what happens to his own babies. They were denying him. Broski, you get a girl pregnant and you want to keep the baby, you will have no rights, bro. Bro, what are you blaming the girls with the pink flags for, bro?
Now, as he basically said by walking away with the flags, he was not going to give them back. So more than 350 of the flags were stolen, and multiple signs were taken from the display. Chairwoman of the conservative group, Kelly Niedert, was informed by campus police that an individual had been apprehended and cited for theft of the flags. I don't know if that was Broski or if it was someone else, but
One.
Yeah,
You've got all this coordinating and tweeting.
And they all had their phones, so you can
got all
find
the
them.
pictures. Yep.
They were all video live streaming.
One person was given a university ticket. $50 for disturbing the peace on a university campus, and none of this. And meanwhile, I guarantee you that's $50 any of them would be willing to pay, because it's never going to appear on their permanent records. It's not going to stop them from getting the degree. It won't be on their transcript, and so they get away with vandalism and theft, and nobody matters. Again, if each of those flags represented 100 African Americans lynched, and some white kids tore that down, those kids would be undergoing expulsion right now.
Amy Coney Barrett, Supreme Court Justice. Take it in. So she has a resume like pretty much no other. And one thing that is on her list of everything she's done in her life involves her involvement in the Kappa Delta sorority while at Rhodes College. So when she was nominated then to be a Supreme Court Justice, which is pretty much a big deal, the sorority decided to put out a little tweet. And you're going to interpret this tweet, I guess, as you will. KD alumna Amy Coney Barrett, was nominated to serve on the Supreme Court. While we do not take a stand on political appointments, we recognize Judge Coney Barrett's significant accomplishment. We acknowledge our members have a variety of views and a right to their own beliefs. That was the tweet.
So, if I may encapsulate here, Rhodes College is a tiny little overpriced liberal arts college in Memphis, Tennessee. It's like most liberal arts college, you get paying a lot of money for a little bit. And the sorority on this, one of the sororities on this campus, Kappa Delta, Amy Barrett was a sister there. And a very tepid, I mean, I guarantee you, if this was a black Kappa Delta who was coming up for Supreme Court liberal, there's no way they would have said, we don't usually take political stance. They would have congratulated her to the moon. So you get this very tepid already, even though we're not political. In other words, don't yell at us. We're just congratulating one of our sisters, right? She went to our sorority. We're not getting involved in your politics. Just know that we want to make it clear that one of our own is being nominated to the Supreme Court. And what happened shortly thereafter?
Well, the original tweet, that tweet I just read, was deleted. And the day after, they sent out an apology tweet.
Yes.
For those who were offended by that first tweet and those who were offended by basically the removal of said first tweet. So they were getting it from all sides, basically. Now, I'm not going to read that entire thing on the screen, as you can see. If you're watching this, if you're listening, go find it. But I'm going to read a couple of the lines. Our approach was disappointing and hurtful to many. We did not intend to enter a political debate.
You didn't.
Take a stand on the Supreme Court nomination.
You didn't.
Cause division among our sisters.
You did not.
Or alienate any of our members.
You should not have. All you did was say, hey, like her or hate her, this is what our sister did. That's it.
Okay, and now if I want to go into Valley Girl sorority style.
Let's do it.
Type expose, they then vowed that they would be better, saying that they're going to focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Your voices help us recognize the impact of our communications and how we can do better moving forward. Thank you for holding us accountable.
So the way to be inclusion is not to congratulate conservative sisters anymore. Not to mention them, not to make note of them.
They're not your sister.
That is a fantastic way to be inclusive, right? Okay. They've learned their lesson. How dare we try to simply congratulate one of our sisters who had a major accolade come her way because her politics were wrong. And what I've learned now as a Delta, a Kappa Delta, is that inclusion means, by definition, the exclusion of conservatives. That I'm not being inclusive until I exclude them.
And one of her sister, not sisters, Amy Siskind, is an author, a feminist, and an activist. And she says she is embarrassed that Barrett is in any way associated with our sisterhood. But it's not really our sisterhood. Like, it's hers, and it's definitely not. Yeah. And Amy is, she's not a sister.
It's not our. That pronoun is not to be used.
She does not stand for our values, and that goes well beyond a half-century-old decision. But I appreciate National addressing the hurt this has caused.
So, in other words, it's hurtful when we include opinions we don't like. And the only way you can get around that is to exclude, in the name of inclusion, those opinions.
I'm actually kind of shocked that Amy Siskind wasn't even more petty, being like, I'm embarrassed that her name is the same name as mine. How dare she even be in anywhere existence with me?
She does not stand for our values. So murdering babies is, where on your sorority register is that?
Yeah,
where on your
Kappa Delta?
Where are on your papers of incorporation? Where does it say that you must be willing to abort babies before you can be part of the sisterhood?
It's time for some real education. The Girl with the Pearl Earring is an oil painting by Dutch master Jan Vermeer, dated around the year 1665. Going by various names over the centuries, it became known by its present title towards the end of the 20th century after the large pearl earring worn by the girl portrayed. The work has been in The Hague since 1902 and has been the subject of various literary treatments. In 2006, the Dutch public selected it as the most beautiful painting in the Netherlands.
Yeah, and this is one of the most famous paintings in the world, so I will show you the image here. You can get a sense of it, how transfixing it is. And I think notice the Caravaggisti technique here, that you've got the black background. Out of that black background you see looking at you, right, is that the shocking color of her face. The light hits it. It's almost as if she's turned her head into the light to look at you, and that remarkable gaze. It's very, this may be the second most famous gaze, female gaze, in any painting that's not known as the Mona Lisa. And so take a look at that, the captivating look on her face. This painting is what was called in Dutch art a tronie. A tronie is a painting of a head that was not meant to be a portrait. This is much more of a snapshot. I mentioned Caravaggio, right? We think about the extreme contrast of dark and light here. That's what you have. In fact, this is the camera, at least a very crude kind of camera, had just been invented in the 17th century. And Vermeer, of all painters, was one of the first to use it. But this anticipates photography as we understand it. Notice that you've got the canvas becomes a kind of print. And as she turns to you, right, imagine the snap, the flash, the snap flash turning, and you're catching in the middle of that dark background, you're seeing that well-lit face and the beautiful sensuality of the image. Take a look at the close-up here. After undergoing restoration recently, you can see just how incredibly sensual the lips are. Take a look at how the light gleams off that full, pouty lower lip. And the teeth. You know, if you think about it, the teeth look much more like pearls than the pearl does. And you got a sense here on even the smallest details of the image. You see just what, you look at the very edge on the left edge of the face. You can see the very, 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 very fine light-colored hairs that would be on anybody's face. How carefully on that micro level did Vermeer make sure that he was painting something that was 100% realistic and accurate? Pull back out for a second, Mike. So again, at the most recent restoration of the painting, which was 1994, the subtle color scheme and the intimacy of the girl's gaze toward the viewer had been greatly enhanced by removing all of that hundreds of years of dust and decay. During the restoration, it was discovered that the dark background, today somewhat mottled, was originally a deep enamel-like green. The effect was produced by applying a thin, transparent layer of paint, a glaze, if you will, over the black background seen now. However, the two organic pigments of the green, glaze, indigo, and weld have faded. And yet it's still, we go back to that the incredible impact of Caravaggio in these striking, even in a tronie, not really a portrait, but something quite like it. This out of the darkness comes this flash of light, and it almost irradiates the young girl's face. Truly one of the great masterpieces of Western culture.
All right, just as a reminder, since all of that social media, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube are demonetizing our content, we've decided to go around them with the Patriot Club. With a one-time, just one little time, $99 tax-deductible donation, we're going to send you this handsome stainless steel tumbler as just a little small gesture of thanks. Visit patriotclub.us to get yours today. That's patriotclub.us. Now we're going to wrap things up with the fun fact of the day. Those Dutch folks, when they're not just staring at the girl with a pearl earring, they like to eat a lot of licorice, as most people do. And they're actually eating the most in the whole world. Each person in the Netherlands eats around 2 kilos, or 4.4 pounds for us Americans. That's about 32 million kilos, or more than 70 million pounds of licorice consumed every year.
And I would be willing to bet it's not the Twizzler type fake licorice.
Twizzlers.
This is the black hardcore, the heavy anise stuff. Thank you. No, thank you. I'll take your tulips. I'll take your art. You can keep your licorice, guys. And Amsterdam, do we want to keep it or let it go? It's the Las Vegas of the...
It's sketch.
And that wraps us up for this show. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke. She's Katie. Until next time, stay educated.